In Stars and Time is a game about time looping, where you play as Sifrin on a journey to defeat the king who has frozen the land of Valgard in time. You're the hero of this story, traveling with your companions to defeat the king where absolutely nothing goes wrong. In Stars and Time is a game about time looping, where you play as Sifrin on a journey to defeat the king who has frozen the land of Valgard in time. Mirabelle is the hero of this story, blessed by the Change God to stop the king. You are the last party member to join the team. Maybe things will go differently this time. In Stars and Time is a play about time looping, where you play as Sifrin, acting in a performance about defeating the king, who has frozen the land of Valgard in time. You are an actor in this play. You know your lines, you know your role. So get back on stage, Sifrin. You have a country to save. In Stars and Time is a 2023 RPG originally released on Steam to a pretty fair amount of acclaim. As I'm sure you've clued in by now, it's a game about time looping, or rather, being stuck in one. In Stars and Time was made by Adrienne Bazir. She's a Canadian solo game developer. She dabbled with the concept for a while with a webcomic that featured an RPG character being stuck in a time loop. She thought it would be really interesting to turn the concept into a game, but wasn't really sure about how to go about making it happen. Eventually, experimenting and learning RPG Maker, fast forward about 3-ish years, and bam, In Stars and Time was born. Before I get too far into this story, I just want to let you know that I will be delving deep into some heavy spoilers here and there, specifically for things around the 100% completion range, as well as obviously the end of the game. I highly recommend that you go play this game and enjoy its story and themes before watching this video. If you're only here for the story and to learn some cool shit about this awesome game, then buckle up, because I'm about to take you for a ride. I will be skimming a lot of details, so even if you watch this video, there's still a lot of value in playing the game. Just saying. Alright, let's get started. Just kidding. Once again, before we get into the story, I need to go through some characters. First, there's Mirabelle, the real hero of the story who narrowly escaped the house after the king froze it in time. She was blessed by the Change God, so she cannot be frozen in time. She's basically immune to the king's curse. Then there's Isabeau, a defender from a country known as Juvante. Defenders are like people who help out random folks and defend the country, I guess. They don't go too much into detail about it, but they're basically like handymen who also help defend places. Isabeau joins the party after every other defender in Juvante refuses to go with Mirabelle to stop the king. Then there's Odile, an older researcher from a country known as Cebu. She joins the party after describing it as physically painful to leave the fate of the country in the hands of children. Then there's Sifrin. It's you, who after wandering through the world aimlessly, joins the party simply because he had nothing better to do. Last but not least, Bonnie is a kid from the small town of Bambouche. Or Bambouche? They found him narrowly escaping the curse as it slowly encroached on him after days of walking to escape it. The enemies of this game are called sadnesses, that are the leftover essence of people frozen in time. They are not friendly and will attack on sight.
Stay back, I got a chainsaw.
Not too much about them is that important though, they're just kind of the enemies in this story. The party has been on this journey for quite some time, collecting orbs that are not important to the plot whatsoever, so don't worry, that they need to open the door to the castle. MacGuffins. In Act 1, Sifrin wakes up to his housemate and Mirabelle telling him about a sleepover at the town clock tower, and asking him to collect his friends. After making a quick wish at the favor tree, totally unimportant by the way, and if you picked anything other than to wear Isabeau's clothing, you're a monster, they all head to the clock tower to have some fun and get ready for the final battle. For bed, Isabeau wants to tell Sifrin something, but only after they've defeated the king, as he's worried it might distract him. The next morning, they head out to the House of Dormont, which houses the king, who is essentially the party's final boss. The party enters the house and soon reaches the Death Corridor, where Mirabelle panics over a rumored trap. Sifrin searches the room, as that is his job, finding nothing, and declares it safe, only to be crushed by a falling boulder as he turns back to confirm that there is no trap. Fun fact, this trap is actually called the "if you feel safe, it activates" O trap. Not me making that up. It's actually what it's called. It's pretty silly. After realizing he is stuck in a time loop and realizing that he totally should have died just now, finds himself meeting someone new under the favorite tree. A Starman! Appropriately named Loop for no plot reason whatsoever. Loop tells Siffrin that he is there to help, and that he specifically asked to be there, whatever that means. It is also important to note for later that he, quote, knows just as much as Siffrin does about the loops. Siffrin sees the loop as an opportunity to save his friends and find solutions to any and all of their problems on their way up to the king. This act is also when Siffrin learns the most about how to manipulate the loops, going forward to save spots in the house and backwards to the beginning back in Dormont. He also learns that he can change the script, as he puts it, by saying different things at different times. Though this can be dangerous, as he really doesn't want the party members finding out that he is in a time loop, as he's worried they will think he is manipulating them. So he tries his best to act non-sus. After climbing the house once again and having to loop to avoid getting stuck or using the wrong items at the wrong time, Siffrin finds himself at the top with his friends. On the third and final floor, in a random shitter, Siffrin takes a moment to celebrate this new power and his successes so far. He also realizes that without it, him and his friends would have died horrible deaths multiple times over. He brushes it aside because it technically didn't happen, and he has the power to never let it happen. The party finds himself up against the king, a towering figure with long hair and shiny armor weeping into his hands. After obligatory monologues about why bad person do bad thing, they begin their fight with the king, only to be defeated in one hit. He killed your party with one hit. After looping back, asking the townspeople, and exploring the house a little more, Siffrin discovers a shield skill that Mirabelle can use to protect the party. Something but a carrot method or something. Sounds weird, but it works. Mirabelle understands how to use the skill, and boom, off to the races. Siffrin also gets in the habit of reminding her at the start of each loop moving forward, so that she always remembers how to use it. Convenient! See? No biggie. Let's climb back up and whoop this king's butt. After finding themselves against the king one more time, they are victorious, albeit after a few tries, thanks to Mirabelle's new shield skill, or more accurately, Siffrin's foreknowledge. Once again, without his power, they would have died horrible, painful deaths. Huzzah! Victory! Whoop whoop, as they say. They did it. They saved the country. Everything unfreezes, and the country of Valgard will know peace once again. In the next room, they find the head housemaiden, the person who was originally supposed to be the king and failed. Hey, so remember earlier when I said the change god blessed Mirabelle? Well, it was actually the head housemaiden who blessed her as she was escaping. Not for any specific reason, but because Mirabelle was already far away from the house that she would escape. So chances were pretty good she would be able to do something.
Excuse me, heavens.
This leads to the people of Valgard believing that Mirabelle was blessed by the change god. So in actuality, Mirabelle isn't all that special and just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Even more reinforcement that she's not really the main character in this story, even though she poses as one. Now that the king is defeated, the loops are sure to end and everything will go back to normal, right? After talking with all your friends, Isabeau decides to tell Siffrin what he wanted to tell him back at the clock tower. He stutters. I love... Bonnie rudely interrupts because he's hungry. A silly little bitch. Isabeau, after losing his nerve, says he'll tell him another time and that he's glad to be friends with him. That was weird. Realizing that this is the end of his journey, Siffrin talks to the head housemaiden, who thanks him for his efforts on their journey. But right before everything ends, it's almost like she glitches. She starts going on and on about how she's sorry, she couldn't stop it, and that something in the world is rotting, broken. It's almost hard to breathe from what smells like burnt cane sugar. You feel a tug on your stomach. Before everything ends, she says through tears, I hope one day you can begin to forgive. Back to the start. This is the recording for the longest part of the video, Act 3. Waking up again, Siffrin is a bit confused and upset. Why didn't it work? Wasn't he given this power to defeat the king, save the country? So why is he still here? Siffrin decides to discuss with Loop that he doesn't know why he's stuck, and Loop tells him that he knew the loops wouldn't end with the king's defeat. After Siffrin's morale is basically shattered, Loop helps him by telling him that at least he's not alone, and there are still roads to follow. So not all hope is lost. At first, Loop does seem suspicious, given the fact that he understands the loops and is unaffected by them. But over time, you really start to see that he's only there to help you. He won't tell you why or how, but if there's one thing to believe, it's that. He tells Siffrin to go learn more about the king and maybe help your friends out to see if that changes anything. It's worth a shot, right? Siffrin decides to help Bonnie to learn how to fight and accept that as a friend, they would protect each other no matter what, even if it means losing an eye in the process. Quick backstory time. I'm going to be doing this for all 4 characters, so strap in. Shortly after Siffrin joined the party, he actually lost his eye protecting Bonnie from a sadness. Bonnie then blamed himself this whole time that he was the reason Siffrin lost his eye. Siffrin comforts him and assures him that if he was in the same situation, he would do it exactly the same. Siffrin helps Mirabelle accept that as a housemaiden, she doesn't need to experience things just for the sake of change, especially if they don't make her happy. In the House of Dormont, and the country of Valgard for that matter, change is a huge thing, and to them, change means growth. So it's kind of like a religious thing, I guess, that as a housemaiden, she needs to experience new things to change. Mirabelle thinks that she needs to find a partner to try out dating so that she can help herself change. But it is very heavily implied that she is Arrow Ace and doesn't really have any interest in dating anyone. Siffrin helps her come to terms with the fact that maybe she doesn't need to go down that road, that she can be happy on her own. Siffrin helps Odile find a family tale for her research, heavy quotes, but Odile admits she isn't researching anything. She came to Valgard to learn about her half-Valgardian heritage. She didn't find herself in its culture, but she did find comfort in how welcoming its people are. Siffrin relates, remembering only a little of his own home. Remember that, because I'm gonna blow your fucking mind later. Odile reassures him that identity isn't defined by birthplace, but who you are as a person. Isabeau and Siffrin have a chat about their insecurities and the fact that even though he has changed before, he still struggles to truly love himself. Siffrin reassures him and tells him that they never felt ashamed of knowing him. It is also incredibly implied that Isabeau is trans and was at one point a girl. Isabeau almost confesses to Siffrin, but he never says the words. This conversation takes place under the stars, where the rest of the party soon shows up and they have a really nice moment together. They're finally a family. After becoming a family, the group makes their way up to the house one more time. Siffrin is positive that this will be the one that frees him from the loops. Maybe the power of friendship could save him. Siffrin was wrong. The power of friendship isn't going to save him here. After going through such intimate moments with his party and truly coming to understand each other, he's forced to go back. Back when Bonnie hated him, and Isabeau was afraid to tell Siffrin how he felt, back when Odile was still so cold and shut off, and when Mirabelle was still unsure of herself. Of course, the power of friendship wouldn't work. That's stupid, right? But I guess there's lots of other things to try out. Getting better gear by knowing things you shouldn't, or manipulating situations to learn more information from people, or to get people to say what you want them to say, and yet the universe still finds a way to keep them from saying it, even though deep down, Siffrin knows what Isabeau is trying to say, yet he can't bring himself to admit it. Siffrin starts slipping a bit this act. He starts seeing ghosts of what looked like himself around the house, some kind of weird residual effect of the universe looping over and over again. It feels like the world is shifting and falling apart behind the scenes, despite everything playing out exactly the same time every single time. Siffrin decides to do a bit more digging on the loops and learns that there is a type of craft known as timecraft, where the user can control time, most likely what the king is doing, but timecraft is incredibly difficult to use. So much so, in fact, that even stopping time for a second would theoretically kill the user. Siffrin decides to ask the king a few questions in person. He asks him about timecraft and how he's using it. Siffrin eventually begins to understand that the king is freezing the country in time, not because he has any malice for the people or the country itself, but because he wants to preserve it. He loves Valgard, but after what happened to his country, he doesn't want to lose another home. Not an evil goal in nature, but freezing a country and everyone in it is not exactly heroic either. Alright, so, time to blow your fucking mind. The king and Siffrin are actually both from the same country. The strange thing is that the country disappeared from everyone's memory. No one can remember its name or what happened to it. Why? Well, we'll have to get into that a little later when it comes relevant. no spoilers for you just yet. After doing some investigating, Sifrin talks to the king again, simply wanting to try and see if the king can remember anything. They realize that both of them have the capability to remember, but just can't for some reason. It's almost painful. Together, they try to say the country's name. Nothing. Only pain. A skull-cracking headache. Something is stopping them from saying their country's name, from remembering. They try again. Nothing. A boom. Someone screaming. The air smelling of burnt sugar. They try one more time, despite the pain, despite Sifrin's family desperately trying to get him to stop. And then... back to the start. Sifrin, confused and honestly quite a bit shaken about what happened, tries a different approach. Sifrin feels like maybe he can get through to the king by talking. He eventually convinces the king to stop fighting. Maybe they can work together to find out what happened to their country. Sifrin tries appealing to his desire to get their home back and just wants to talk. The king agrees to stop and decides that together they can reverse the curse and find out what happened to their country. The king, the silly goose, uses this as an opportunity to trick Sifrin and his family, getting them close enough to freeze them in time, grabbing Bonnie and threatening that he will make sure that Sifrin remembers this loop. He then proceeds to crush Bonnie in his hand in front of them, acknowledging that Sifrin is probably using something called wishcraft to repeatedly come back to this fight, to repeatedly stop the king from having his victory. Sifrin can't take it anymore. He has to loop right now. He can't watch his family members die one by one, and somehow, after hearing a crunch, Sifrin loops. After waking up in a bit of a panic and needing to confirm Bonnie's safety, Sifrin talks to Loop and mentions that the king said something about wishcraft. Loop suggests that maybe there are some books that might have some information on wishcraft. Sifrin agrees, and using the memories of memories are a thing you can equip to do various things, not that important, just game mechanic. Sifrin is able to read his home country's language. In Act 4, everything starts to feel like a play. Sifrin is the director and main actor, while his family members are puppets that he controls with his responses. Alright, so before we get too crazy in this act, I wanted to discuss the sus system in Act 4. There's actually a hidden tracker that keeps track of when you act suspicious in front of your parties, doing things like grabbing gear that isn't actually there, or knowing about key locations when you shouldn't, or saying specific dialogue options that are just kind of weird, stuff like that. Your party starts to notice things about you. They start seeing how tired Sifrin is, how he seems to know where keys are and where to go without hesitation. After exploring the house and finding 3 more books in his own blinding language, Sifrin discovers that wishcraft can only be done with certain rituals. Rituals that nobody else in Valgard seems to know how to do correctly except him and the king, I guess? Since he clearly used wishcraft to be able to control time, Sifrin finds papers in the head housemaiden's office that are spreadsheets of what look like wishes made by the people of Valgard. He then realizes that the head housemaiden knows about wishcraft. He comes to the strangely simple conclusion that if the head housemaiden knows about wishcraft, then she must be able to fix it, right? Yeah, Sifrin is going a little loopy at this point. I mean, after almost 100 loops, who wouldn't? He makes his way up to her one more time after mentioning... me, why did I word it like this? He makes his way up to the head housemaiden one more time, and after mentioning wishcraft and seeing her usual breakdown, she says something different. She says she doesn't know why it didn't work and why it's broken, but the wish didn't work, and she's sorry and hopes that he can forgive them. The shock of realizing he might be stuck here forever is almost as terrible as the overwhelming, almost choking scent of burnt sugar. Sifrin wakes up in the meadow again, after being told by the head housemaiden that she could not save them, their mental state worsening almost immediately. Eventually, Sifrin comes to the conclusion that the only logical way to escape the loops is to make sure that he lands the final blow on the king. He thinks that it's because every time they fight the king, Mirabelle uses her main character powers to defeat the king, essentially always landing the final blow. Yeah, Sifrin's not doing too great. After taking his flawed logic to Loop and hearing his doubts, he curses Loop, calling them out for being aware of there being no way to break the loops and just watching him suffer, saying to Loop, "Did you enjoy the show?" Sifrin, wanting to destroy the king as fast as possible, tries to have his hangups with his family to get their best skills, only to realize that cutting corners and snapping at them, calling them cowards and taking advantage of their deepest insecurities, does not go over well. It goes so poorly, in fact, that when Sifrin returns to the clock tower, he overhears his party say how they can't trust him at a critical time like this, causing Sifrin to run off to the house to finish the king himself. After so many loops, Sifrin is probably strong enough to take on the king by himself, sitting at a beefy level 99. After traveling through a very glitchy and messed up version of the house, Sifrin confronts the king, putting up a pretty good fight, nearly defeating him actually, but Sifrin is still vulnerable to the king's curse and gets frozen in time. This sends Sifrin to a void where he is faced with what is presumably his sadness, kind of like his shadow if you've ever played the Persona games. This sadness's name is mal du pays, which is the French expression for homesickness. Mal du pays is most likely a representation of Sifrin's self-loathing, paranoia, regret, self-doubt, and fear of abandonment. Its voice is of his party members using hateful language and taking advantage of his insecurities. Hearing Bonnie's voice question why Sifrin couldn't protect him, and that he let him die before. Odile's voice saying she's disappointed in him, and that they will all move on and forget him. Isabeau's voice taunting him about how he's afraid of changing, and that's why he wants him so bad, so that he has someone next to him that makes him look good. Sifrin tries to excuse it, saying that none of this is real, only for Mal du Pays to grab him and reassure him that everything he said was true. Anyways, this can't be beat. It actually has an insane amount of HP, sitting at a hefty 999,999 HP, and still being immune to all of your attacks. Even in Sifrin's most critical moment when he thinks all hope is lost and he is going to be stuck here forever, suffering, he is suddenly unfrozen, and his friends are there to protect him, telling Sifrin that he doesn't have to fight anymore. Mirabelle uses a reflective spell to cast the king's attack back at him, freezing him in time. As he is frozen, the king finally begins to remember his and Sifrin's forgotten country, but is frozen before he can say anything about it. The party then reveals that after Sifrin left, they looked around Dormont to try to find them, only to find Loop, who helped them navigate the house and find him. As the party then walks towards the head housemaiden, Sifrin's sanity is shown to still be pretty bad, while reality itself is shown breaking down as the sky turns red, the one and only color in the game. After reaching her only to find the head housemaiden just as glitched up as the house, Sifrin begins to accept just staying in the loops forever. When the head housemaiden mentions that everyone can go home, something snaps in Sifrin, prompting him to use witchcraft, presumably subconsciously, to become a giant space version of Sifrin called the Played One. This starts a battle between Sifrin and the party, Sifrin continually repeating, "I can't let you go home." Almost feels like he's the one trapping everyone in the loop, huh? Nah, that's crazy. Odile attacks Sifrin in, quote, self-defense, causing Sifrin to either attack the party or themselves for being hated, with Mirabelle using her healing craft to restore Sifrin's health. The party attempts to get through Sifrin as they break down and slowly begin to realize they are trapped in a time loop by picking up on his ramblings. As Sifrin panics and prepares to loop again, Odile manages to stop them using, I guess, slow? I honestly don't know how she did this, but plot, so moving on. This holds Sifrin in place and gives everyone an opportunity to tell Sifrin what they wished for so that he could tell them what he wished for. This causes Sifrin to revert to normal and lose their hat, unfortunately. It's a really dope hat. I kind of wish I had one. During this dramatic skyfall, the party convinces Sifrin to divulge what he wished for, initially stating the wish the player chose for them back in Act 1. They realized, though, what they actually wished for was to stay with everyone, out of fear that once the king was defeated and the country saved, everyone would leave Sifrin and would be alone again. Everyone then restates their care for them and that they still wish to stay together. Sifrin is brought to tears and the party embraces them as they cry it out, which finally frees them from the loops. After their dramatic skyfall, they land back up near the head housemaiden, and Sifrin goes around apologizing to each of his friends for the way they acted. Following this, Sifrin can opt to speak to the head housemaiden to end the game, or go back into the house to speak to the now freed housemaidens inside, and even Dormont, who are celebrating the king's defeat. If you go to the favor tree to talk to Loop, Siffrin finds them gone, believing them to be a part of the loops and has disappeared with their purpose complete. Siffrin apologizes and says goodbye, leaving their silver coin at the tree before leaving as a part of a ritual from their past they remembered. Once talking to the head housemaiden and triggering the ending, Siffrin becomes scared that he'll loop again, so Bonnie convinces the party to link hands to assure him he won't go back again. After a moment, nothing happens, so the party asks the head housemaiden to tell a story. As it happens, Siffrin finally realizes the loops truly are over and takes one last breath of air and smiles as the credits roll. The end. Kind of. There's actually more. This is where the whole point of the video comes in. There's actually a bit more to this story. Most other videos on In Stars in Time would end right here, when in actuality, there's quite a bit more to the story that goes unsaid if the player doesn't look into it. Let's look at Loop. Who is he? Well, as he says, he, quote, asked to be there to help Siffrin, which obviously isn't very specific about what he is. He says he's a star and that he just knows things because he's a part of the universe. Strangely enough, he knows a lot about Siffrin too, down to his habits and allergies. Well, let's rewind a bit. Funny time loop joke. And look at this little demo prototype thingy thing by Adrian Bazier called Start Again, a prologue. Although you can play them separately and don't need them to understand each other, it's important to note that this serves as more of a prologue than just a demo, hence the prologue in the name. Now, there's actually a lot of implications throughout the main game that imply Loop was the Siffrin from Start Again. In Start Again, we get to see a different Siffrin stuck in a time loop in the middle of the house. But in this instance, we get to see him after he has tried and failed to beat the king numerous times, even alluding to him taking multiple hundreds or even thousands of attempts. In Start Again, the party starts to notice that Siffrin looks really tired, faking his smile when he thinks they're not looking, and just overall not looking well. This obviously concerns his friends because in their perspective, he was fine the day before, and then suddenly he just seems miserable. Like our Siffrin, he bottles his emotions and refuses to let the party know he's stuck in a time loop. After each loop playing out the same, they finally start saying different things to Siffrin's surprise. Although these things are in concern of Siffrin's condition, he's still surprised that things are going differently. So different, in fact, that the king actually takes longer to do his party wiping attack. And when he actually does do it, the party survives. After the party lands the final blow, defeating the king for the first time in thousands of loops, Siffrin feels the world starting to loop and panics, waking up in the usual spot in the meadow that we see him wake up in during the main game. It is heavily implied that this is the moment he makes his wish to escape the loops, which is what we actually see at the start of the game. The dream that Siffrin has of himself eating a star that has a striking resemblance to Loop's head, it's a bit hard to exactly judge what happened to that Siffrin, but somehow he became a star and appeared under the favorite tree, ready to help our Siffrin when time loops start again. They talked a lot about the universe and gods, so we could probably chalk this up to being something along the lines of the universe placed Loop there to help Siffrin escape the loops, still technically making his wish come true by proxy. Unfortunately for Loop, this meant having to tragically watch himself go through the same cruel and hopeless experience only to see himself succeed in the end. Albeit, only because Loop was there to help Siffrin. During In Stars in Time, it's quite obvious through a lot of Loop's dialogue that he knows more than he's letting on. If you meet the specific prerequisites, the game will play a special cutscene when you go back to the favor tree during Act 6. This time, however, Siffrin would find nothing but a silver coin sitting on the root where Loop usually sits. Siffrin realizes that this coin is the exact coin he's had in his pocket from before he started looping. Siffrin comes to the conclusion that Loop must be another version of himself. Siffrin calls out to Loop for him to show himself so they can talk. Loop appears in his usual spot, and Siffrin passes his own coin to them, and they reveal themselves to be a Siffrin from a timeline where they had nobody to help them. He eventually broke down and made a new wish to have them escape the loops, landing them in this new timeline. But with this Siffrin having now escaped the time loops, a jealous Loop decides to kill them and take their place. During this fight, if you beat Loop, which is very easy, he actually loops back to heal his health fully. Emphasizing the point even harder that you are fighting another version of yourself here. Same capabilities and all. Regardless of whether Siffrin or Loop wins, Loop breaks down due to wondering why Siffrin could escape and not them? What made them so different? Why did it have to be him? But it's quite obvious, isn't it? Why did our Siffrin make it out of the loops? It's because Siffrin had Loop to talk to and work things through. Or in other words, unlike Loop, Siffrin wasn't alone. After reassuring Loop that the only reason he escaped the loops was because of him, Loop advises Siffrin to be more open to the party and to be ready when it comes time for the party to split, saying to Siffrin that we can't let this happen again. Loop starts to vanish, but assures Siffrin they'll meet again one day. Siffrin takes Loop's silver coin before returning to the party, looking back one more time to see Loop gone from his usual spot. Pretty tragic story if you ask me. Loop being there to help Siffrin was the difference between being stuck in or escaping the loops. Loop is now being forced to watch the good ending after having experienced the bad. I think his crash out was pretty justified. I think any normal person would react to that. Another version of yourself living a better life. There's a lot of dialogue throughout the game that hints to the fact that Loop is Siffrin. So much so, in fact, that at one point, Loop even asks what Siffrin thinks he is. And you can even say, me, referring to Siffrin. Of course, he laughs it off and says, sure, sarcastically. I think it's pretty tragic what happened to Loop, and Siffrin for that matter. Being forced to relive events to the point of insanity is pretty brutal. But I also think there's something important to learn from this story. Being open with those close to you can help you get through the hardest of times. Because without Loop and his friends, Siffrin would have without a doubt been stuck fighting to escape the loop for the rest of time. In Stars in Time is a fantastic game that masterfully blends its story and game mechanics to create one-of-a-kind gaming experience that I personally have never seen replicated before or after in Stars in Time. Now, there's still a lot to this game, so if this video got you interested in playing, then I wholeheartedly recommend that you go check this out. Granted, it can be a bit repetitive, but I think that's just something that comes with a game of this style. Having to loop and repeat events is bound to get repetitive. There's still so much I'm curious about, like the strange sugar smell around Wishcraft, and what truly happened to Siffrin's home country. The game explains what the current situation is with it, but it never goes into too much detail on what actually happened. It's pretty clear that Siffrin's home country was well versed in witchcraft and astronomy. It's heavily theorized that someone somewhere made a wish that went haywire, and somehow erased the island and all memories regarding it. I would love to see more stories about the island itself one day, but I don't think we'll be getting any more In Stars in Time stuff from Miss Adrian. It seems like she's working on other projects these days, which you guys should totally go give her some support and check out some of her other stuff. I'll link her website in the description down below, actually. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun studying In Stars in Time, and quite honestly, I had a hard time writing this script. Even as I'm recording this, I'm still making changes to the script. I've never done a video like this before, so it was a new experience for me, and it was pretty difficult. As glad as I am to see it done, I am more sad to say that I'm completely done with In Stars in Time. While recording footage for this video, I also went out to get the Platinum Trophy and 100% complete the game. And let me just say, for this game being surprisingly simple on the outside, it is deep and rich with lore and interesting secrets. So please, please, please go play In Stars in Time. You won't regret it. Anyways, before I go on another tangent, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want more Gamma B, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications for whenever I release a new video. Alright, that'll be it for today, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.